Good morning. Thank you for joining us today for Team Canada Tech Thursdays. We'll give everyone just another 30 seconds or so to log in. And while we're doing that, just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Today we are in listen-only mode, just to maintain audio for everyone, to make sure it's clear. We do want to encourage questions and engagement, interaction, so please definitely use the question panel or the chat panel in the GoToWebinar console. We will follow up with questions towards the end of the webinar, and if we by chance run out of time, we will follow up with you directly afterwards. And without further ado, I'll introduce you to your speaker today, Weil El-Nuwaisri. He is our sales engineer for WatchGuard Canada. Weil, take it away.
I'm a sales engineer with WatchGuard Canada, and today we're going to be talking about content inspection. And in our agenda, we will cover the definition of content inspection, how it can relate to security features, and how it will affect the performance of the firewall, how we can deploy HTTPS content inspection and the steps related to that, some tips and tricks, and few minutes at the end for questions and answers. Okay, so let's get started here. We need to know the definition of content inspection. But before going to that, we need to understand why do we need content inspection. Some of the information here is related to the WatchGuard Internet Security Report of Q1 2020. And the first number that we have is that 2/3 of the malware delivered via encrypted connection. 72% of the encrypted malware is 0-day, which is a big number. 67% of the phishing attacks uses HTTPS, and as we know that phishing attacks, it could be started the infection of the 0-day attacks, including ransomware, of course. Over 80% of the customer's traffic occurs over HTTPS. So if we have 80% of the traffic in total is HTTPS, and we don't have a way on how we can decrypt that traffic. Take a look at it, find out if it is a 0-day attack or if it's a phishing attack. We would have a massive blind spot. So without decryption, no visibility into data type, application, policy adherence, file type, or data that related to the HTTPS traffic, and we cannot apply most of these advanced features that we have in total security. Okay, but first we need to understand what's the difference between DPI and DCI. These are two terms that you will face if you actually Google content inspection. So deep packet inspection historically was first, and actually it's going to inspect the headers and the data protocol structure. Then it's going to match the packet payloads to a malware signature or other specific signature. DCI, on the other hand, or deep content inspection, it will scan both the handshake and the payload. It's gonna scan the signature matching, behavior analysis, regulatory and compliance analysis. We're gonna do all that. Also, it will have the correlation of the session under inspection to other historical information that's available on the firewall so that we can apply the security feature to it, like IPS or the gateway antivirus and so on. And please note that when I'm talking here about DPI or DCI, we are talking still about HTTP traffic. So it has to be visible so that we can do the scanning. That's why it will lead us to the next term that we have here. And we are very specific by saying it is a HTTPS proxy content inspection. So When content inspection is enabled on the firewall or the firebox can decrypt the HTTPS traffic, examine the content, and then encrypt the traffic again with a new certificate. So the HTTP proxy is going to decrypt the content for the requests that match a configured domain name that we have an inspect action for, or we can use the web blocker categories that to inspect specific type of traffic. So the idea is that your firewall is going to be in the middle and decrypting the traffic and encrypting it again between the client and the server. And as you can see in here, that this firewall is going to inspect the inner HTTP content. Now, some key features of the HTTPS inspection solution is something we have to talk about because these points have to be available on your firewall to be able to do content inspection and to have better security. First thing is the accelerated inspection. Definitely, if we are doing HTTPS decryption and then encryption again, you have the session, and it will have more resources that is going to be used in the firewall. A lot of the vendors, they're going to publish very impressive inspection throughput figures, but they are actually for basic inspection only. They are not doing the HTTPS, decryption and then the content inspection over that. Second thing that you have to pay attention to that the full support of the latest TLS standard, and the latest TLS is 1.3, and it has a popular adoption in the industry, and definitely it is something that your firewall have to support. Inspection by category. So this actually, it is related to the way that we enable you to do the configuration. So sometimes when it comes to the inspection, what we worry about is specific categories that is related to, let's say, as an example, like Facebook or social media or things that we really cannot trust, or as we can put it in other words, that we don't know who's the source of that information. So maybe we don't need to apply it on our government agencies or on RBC or these kind of insurance companies and so on. Okay, so how it relates to security features and performance. If I'm gonna do the content inspection and I'm gonna do the HTTPS decryption, how that's gonna affect things. Now, I put here some kind of comparison just to let you know or understand the difference. Now, if I go to the HTTPS connection proxy, right? So what we can see and cannot see if we don't do content inspection. So if it's a normal HTTPS proxy without the decryption or the content inspection, then we can see the IP address and the domain and subdomain information. If we do the decryption of the HTTPS, then we can see this information, again, the IP address and domain and subdomain info, but also we can see the URL info and the content. And when you load a specific website, it is not only the main URL. Also, we have the subdomain information and sub URL information that's related to the object of that specific website. Now, without decryption, some of the security features that I can do. So if I go to the HTTPS proxy, I created that, I don't want to use content inspection, then I can apply IPS, geolocation, application control, and even I can use DNS watch because these services in here, they go up to layer 4 in the way that it works. But if I have HTTPS decryption running on the content inspection, so beside whatever that we talked about in here, then we're going to have gateway antivirus and also APT or advanced persistent threat or the sandboxing. Now, if you noticed that I didn't talk about web blocker yet, because now if you enable web blocker in HTTPS proxy action, but do not enable the content inspection, So you'll notice if you go to the configuration, I will show you later on in the demo, that if you go to the configuration of the HTTPS proxy, the web blocker is available for you in there. But in this scenario, the proxy action uses the website certificate to identify the website category and decide whether to allow it or deny it. Now, without the content inspection, the HTTPS proxy action cannot selectively deny the website content, and the users do not see a deny message when the content is denied by WebBlocker. There is also no option for the user to type a WebBlocker local override passphrase. So for all these reasons, we would recommend that you will enable HTTPS proxy action plus inspect so that you will have the content inspection running. Now, definitely whenever that we are turning these the content inspection, it will affect the performance of the firewall. But it depends on the percentage or how much the effect is going to be. And here we have this source from Mercom, and we have this report, which is a third party that did the testing for M270, which is the entry point of our rack-mounted devices, against other brands like Cisco, Fortinet, SonicWall, and Sophos. And as you can notice in here, when it comes to the firewall plus IPS, there will be some kind of similarities on how um, the services are running. But once that we add on the services that we have in the UTM, which is the IPS antivirus, we have the UTM turned on, then we will see the difference when it comes to the speed of WatchGuard Firebox M270. So the Cisco Meraki did not support HTTPS anyway, so it's out of the picture. The Sophos is unable to support encrypted traffic without the antivirus features enabled. The WatchGuard Firebox M270 outperformed all the vendors for every feature enabled with the firewall configuration. So in other words, that WatchGuard had the highest UTM performance at 661 megabit per second, which is 11% higher than its best competitors, and as much as 82% more than the SonicWall. So definitely, when we are talking about the performance, even when you size a firewall, right? Take a look at the HTTPS throughput with the UTM features turned on. Now, how to deploy the content inspection? To do that, we have to understand what's the normal function and how the firewall is going to be part of this communication. So in this example, let's say that we have somebody is trying to, as a client, to open Facebook, right? And if this connection, it's a normal HTTPS proxy that I don't want to do content inspection, it's going to go through the firewall and communicate with the resources outside, which is going to be your Facebook server. Now, definitely I can apply some of the security services that we talked about without content inspection. But if I want better security, definitely I have to decrypt the traffic so that I can apply other services like APT or and gateway antivirus and so on. So to do that, the firewall have to break this connection into two. So you have here the internal interface, and here you have the external interface, and the firewall have to create the first session here that it has to take the role or impersonate the role of the server from the point of view of the client. And it will impersonate the client role from the point of view of the server. Now, definitely, it has to get this original website certificate um, and install it here and use it in the role that it is, impersonating the server role from the point of view of the client. But it has to inject something else or re-sign it, as we say, with something called Proxy Authority Certificate. That is actually the certificate of the firewall. Now, if we're going to do that, now the firewall, whenever that this connection is going outside, whatever that the certificate that's going to be presented to the client, it's actually is going to be the Proxy Authority Certificate. Once this is done, now the we have HTTP traffic that can be inspected by the firewall, and then I'm gonna encrypt it again here using the certificate and send it to the server. Okay, now points to take into consideration for this process. The proxy authority certificate, it is not trusted by the end user by default. So if you enable content inspection, and this is one of the issues why sometimes administrators, they don't read the whole thing. They just say, okay, we have here an inspect action under the HTTPS proxy, and once that they do that, the effect that's going to happen, this is what the end user is going to see, because the end user doesn't understand or doesn't trust this proxy authority certificate. So we have to find a way or how we can make the end user devices trust this specific proxy authority certificate. And that will lead us to how we're going to deploy this DPI and SSL certificates. Now, there are two methods to resolve these issues before that going to the content inspection configuration. The first option that I have is to create a proxy authority certificate that is signed by your local certificate authority or certification authority, which is under your Active Directory, or maybe it's separate from it, but it is local, and this is the recommended method. There is another option that you can import or install the default proxy authority certificate manually into each of the end user devices and servers that you have internally. Once this is done, then we resolve the issue of the certificates, and then we can go to turn on the content inspection, and I will show you all these steps live in a few minutes. Now, I just wanted to go through the steps that relate to the Active Directory Certification Authority. So first of all, you need to install the Certification Authority role in your domain if it is not already done. You need to verify that you can reach to this website, which is HTTPS server, your name of the server or the local host if you are accessing that from the Certification Authority server itself, /certserv. This is what's going to enable you to issue the certificates or sign them as needed. Now, once you verify that, then you can go to the firewall and you can create the CSR for the proxy authority certificate. In the certificate portal, which is this, you're going to request a certificate and you're going to submit as advanced certificate request, and it has to be the type of subordinate certification authority. Now, once this is done, in the Certification Authority console, you're gonna download both this certification authority certificate, which is the root CA, and the proxy certification authority certificate. So both of these certificates has to be available. So later on, once that you go back to the FSM and import the certificates, it will ask you first, what is the proxy authority certificate? You're gonna upload that, and then it will tell you what is the certificate for who issued that certificate to you. Then we're gonna do that as well. And at the end, definitely you need to test the browsing, and at that point, you are not supposed to see the issue that the certificate is not trusted anymore because the end users, they trust the certification authority. Now, what are the pros and cons of the certificate authority method? Um, and why it's recommended, right? So the pros is that if the Firebox is replaced or reset, redeploying the Firebox certificate across all the endpoint is not needed. And no endpoint interaction necessary during the initial step, right? All this configuration of the steps that we saw so far, it is done on the firewall and the certification authority. Some of the cons that it is more initial configuration required, but please remember, if you have a client that has, a couple of hundred devices, you will just do that, and you don't need to go to each device and install locally. It is only usable by domain joined Windows systems. Definitely, there are other workarounds for Mac and Linux, but it is out of the scope of this session. There's additional hardware or licenses that it might be required because this is certification authority that is needed for the local CA setup. Okay, so now let's take a look at how the deployment is going to be done. And in here, I'm going to cover mainly 3 points. The first one, um, what's going to happen if you turn on inspect on the HTTPS proxy without actually handling the certificates first? And how we can actually install this certificate manually on the end user devices. Then we're going to move into how we can do that using the certification authority and Active Directory. And at the last thing that I will show you that how we can do the configuration and revisit the inspect on the firewall itself. So let's get started here. First thing, if let's say now I didn't actually have any inspect action on my HTTPS, and I want to go to one of the website that is using HTTPS. So let's say that I'm going to snapchat.com. Now everything is running, everything is okay. If I take a look here at this certificate, I'll see that it is the connection is secure and the certificate is valid. And as you can see, that is issued to Snapchat, issued by DigiCert server in Canada. So now let's say that I didn't handle the certificate issue and I went directly to my firewall and to my policy manager. I went to my HTTPS proxy itself. And under the proxy action, I went under content inspection and I just turned this one on. I didn't read anything. I just decided to go and inspect this traffic. Okay. So if I click OK here and save this configuration to the firewall, save the configuration, we're going to go and close this browser. Right? And we're going to open it again. And now we're going to start going to Snapchat again. As you can see here, it started there. There's some of the information that it is broken. If I refresh it, you'll see that the connection is not private and that this specific certificate is not trusted. Why? Because actually currently the firewall is handing the proxy authority certificate to the end user. If I want to take a look at it, I can find it from here. So it's invalid, right? And as you can see, it's issued to Snapchat, but the issuer is the fireware HTTPS proxy. And definitely, if you want to know the reason, if I go here, that it's take a look at this, you'll see that it is not a certificate that it's trusted by the end user. It is not available for the end user to trust. Okay, so how we can handle this now? How we can get this certificate? So the first option that I can have is to go to FSM, and we can download the certificate from there. There's two ways to do that as well. As you can see here, I can go to view certificates or just click on this icon and it will take me to the certificates on the firewall. As you can see in here, there's multiple type of certificates available. The one that I'm interested in right now is the Proxy Authority certificate, right? And if I click on it, it will show me the information. It's used by the HTTPS proxy, right? So this is a self-signed certificate that it's issued by the firewall and used by the firewall whenever that I turn the inspect on. Okay, so how can I get this? I can actually export it and I can save it on my desktop and I can give it a name that makes sense. So let's say this is a self-signed proxy authority certificate, right? And if you notice the extension is going to be PEM, right? So we will see how we can handle that. I close that, close my browser. So I have here a self-signed certificate, but if I click on it, it will not actually uh, be able to install. It just show me the details of it, and that doesn't make any sense for the end user. So one of the things that can be done in this scenario, that I can come here, change the extension to CRT or CER. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. Okay. And now if I click on it, I can actually install that certificate. And you'll notice that it's been issued by the firewall and issued to the firewall, right? So it's used by the inspect. I'll come back to the install, but I want to show you another way that you can get this certificate, right? So if I open the browser and I go to the web interface of my firewall, right? And I'm going to go to port 4126 and then cert portal. Right. So as you can see here, this is where that they can download. And if you notice that they give the instruction to the end user, if you after you download the certificate, double click on it and install it under the Trusted Root Certification Authority store. So I just want to show you the difference that once that I download this, it downloaded as CER, right? So maybe it is easier for the end user, just double click on it and then you can install it. All right, so let's go back to this self-signed certificate and try to install it on this laptop and see if it's gonna work. So the first thing is it's gonna be installed under the store location for the current user or for the local machine. If you have this device is being used by multiple users and you want content inspection to work on all of them, it's better that you install it on the local machine. Okay, yes, I want to do that. And another issue that sometimes the end user, they don't read that they have to place the certificate in a specific place, which has to be the root certificate authority. If you do automatically, it might end under the personal, and definitely in this scenario, it's not going to resolve the issue. So you have to go here, place all the certificate in the following store, and you have to choose trusted root certification authorities. Click next, finish. Okay, the import was successful. Great. So let's go now, open our browser and go to Snapchat one more time. As you can see now, the issue has been resolved. And if you want to see the information, as we said, there is one place here that you can go now to the certificate and you see that it's valid and it's issued to snapchat.com, but issued by the firewall, as you can see, right? Because as we said, it's impersonating that role, the client and server, right? To depends on where the connection that it's going to be communicating with. Another place that you can go and see this information, if you go here to more tools, developer tools, right? You can see this page is being secured using HTTPS, and here's the certificate. So you can see the certificate from here as well. Okay, so this is how it's going to be done manually. Now, let's move on and let's show you how it's going to be done if we have a certification authority. Okay, so the first thing that I need to do is to actually create the request for the certificate and then go to the certification authority and sign it, and then import that certificate to my firewall. So we're gonna go back here to our FSM, same place, and now we're gonna actually request or create a CSR first, right? And through the wizard, the first thing that we need to choose that it is a proxy authority certificate that we need to have the request for. And when it comes here to the name, so we can go with example.net, or I have actually an Active Directory with domain, so I can use WatchGuard WME.ca. That's the common name. The company, WatchGuard WME. Okay, and the other required information, the country, I'm gonna put it as Canada. And then I'm gonna click on next. So this is the subject name that I just typed the information for. We need to put the DNS name. So it's gonna be WatchGuard WME.ca. The IP address is not required. So in case that this specific certificate is not assigned to the IP address, or if the IP address is being changed or anything, you're not going to have issue with this certificate. User admin name, I'm just going to put admin at watchguardwme.ca. Going to click on next. Then the algorithm type, I'm going to choose to be RSA 248. Next, and this is the time that it's going to ask you for the admin password so that it can create the CSR. Right? Great. So now I have actually this request. I'm going to click on copy. And the next step, we're going to move to our certification authority. So I have certification authority that is running here. I'm going to log in. Great. So once that I logged in, definitely this is my domain controller and it's Active Directory. It's Windows Server 2019. I already have the AD, DS, and CS role that has been installed in it. Whenever that you install the CS, if I take a look at that, if I go here under adding features, installation type, right, and clicking next. Right, so it is actually this specific role, Active Directory Certificate Services, and make sure that the certification authority role is installed, as well as the certification authority web enrollment that also is being installed. Right. This is important so that you can actually go to the your browser and go to the certification authority portal, and you can issue and sign the certificates. Okay, so now I'm gonna go here under tools. I'm gonna go under certification authority to show you how it's gonna look like. So we have here the certification authority for WatchGuardWME.ca. One of the things that also you have to make sure that the certificate templates in here, that you have the subordinate certification authority available for you as well. Now, to access this certification authority web enrollment, I have to open my browser. I'm going to go to the local host, cert srv, and this is going to show up, right? So I'm going to request here a certificate. We have to go to advanced certificate request, and we're going to submit a certificate request by using a base64 encoded CMC. And this is where I'm gonna paste that request And when it comes to the certificate template, I'm going to choose Subordinate Certification Authority. Click Submit, right? So the firewall support this base64 encoded. This is the one that we want. And we're going to download the certificate. I'm going to save it, right? Open folder. I'm going to change the name for this. So this one is going to be Proxy Authority Certification, right? For WatchGuard WME. Okay, so now I have the certificate. Now there is another certificate that's needed. So this is the one that is going to be used by the firewall, but you have to have also the root certificate loaded into the firewall as well, right? So I'm going to copy this one first. I'm going to paste it in here. So I have now this certificate, right? Now, if I click next, I still have that specific request. I can import now, but if let's say definitely if you know you have some time between the request is being generated, the time that the certificate is being signed and sent to you, then you will see here that we will have a pending request that it is available, right? Okay, so now I'm going to click on finish because we want to go into the normal classical way to import it. And I want to show you here that now the request that I made is being pending, right? So I can actually import a certificate now. Click on next. It's a proxy authority certificate. As you can see, this option is for re-signing the CA certificate for outbound content inspection. It is a base 64. I'm going to choose the file and the desktop. Great. Click next. And we're going to put the password. And if you notice now, once that we installed or imported this proxy authority certificate, it's going to ask us to import a root or intermediate CA certificate. So we have to make sure that we have the certification authority that signed the certificate to be trusted by the firewall itself, right? So how to get this certification authority certificate? I'm going to go back to my certification authority portal. And if I go back, I will notice here that I can download a CA certificate, the current certification authority. We're going to download it in base 64, download the CA certificate, and I'm going to save it. I'm going to open the folder. I'm going to give it a name that makes sense. So this one is going to be the certification authority certificate for my domain. Great. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go back here, paste it. And now I'm going to choose this file. So all files on the desktop. And I'm going to come here. And this is the CA certificate. Again, it's going to ask you for the password for the admin. Great. So these are the two certificates that we have, the Proxy Authority Certificate and the CA Root Certificate that signed the Proxy Authority Certificate. Click Finish. Great. Now, if you go now under Proxy Authority, you will see that we have the updated one. And if I go here under the CA certificates, I can see the CA certificate also, it's being trusted. Great. So these are the steps that we need to do. So anyone that now is part of this Active Directory, because they trust the certification authority, then they will trust this specific certificate, which is the Proxy Authority certificate that is going to be used by your firewall. Great. Okay, now let's go back to the firewall itself and take a closer look at the configuration that we done earlier for the inspect. So if I go here under the proxy action for the HTTPS, let's take a look here at what are the components that we have. If you notice that we are under content inspection, and one of the issues that we had at the beginning and some other vendors have, that it's related to the amount of exceptions that you have to do manually for connection, HTTPS connection that doesn't like this, the proxy authority, and that it has to do this specific connection between the client and server to be broken into two, which is understandable. So if there are some specific websites such as government or related or insurance or financial sector, then you can actually have that already being added to the predefined content inspection exceptions. So this specific list is being maintained by our team. And if I go here, you will notice like things like Skype, like Okta, Dropbox, Office 365, some other related to GoToMeeting, the WebEx, all these type of applications. They don't like this specific breaking into the session into two. This is definitely updated every time that we have an update for the operating system as needed. So that's going to save you a lot of time for sure. What we are actually worried about when it comes to the inspection and going, through the HTTPS decryption and taking a look at the traffic and making sure that there is no viruses, there's no attacks. It's mainly the other type of applications, such as social media or YouTube or some forums that you can click on a link and take you to an infected location. So the other thing here that's related to the configuration, if you notice that we have the domain names and we are allowing here, right? So allow or deny access to the site if the server name matches a configured domain name on this list. Okay, so in here we are allowing, it means that it's bypassing, it is whitelisted. So this is your manual location. If there's a specific application, specific domain that you want to bypass the inspection, then you can come and actually add it in here. Once this is done, then we're going to go to the proxy action. And that's the time now, since that we are inspecting. So you have the option of allowing, which is we had that at the beginning before doing any kind of inspect, deny, drop, or block for HTTPS proxy, right? But we're going to leave it here on inspect, a log, so that you can have the information related to this sessions, logged into dimension or the visibility in the cloud. And we're going to take a look here at the proxy action. If you notice now, because now it's decrypted, it's an HTTP client standard proxy action. Then that's the time that you deal with it as a normal HTTP connection. You can have the data loss prevention, web blocker, gateway antivirus, reputation enabled defense, and the APT blocker that you can enable in this scenario. Okay, so this is one of the ways on how to do it, right? That you have an exception list that is created by WatchGuard and updated. You have your own exception list or white list for things that you don't want to inspect. And then you are inspecting everything else that is going through HTTPS. There is another way that actually you can do this configuration. You can go here under web blocker, right? Okay, so under web blocker, If I go here, I can choose one of the configuration profile that I, created before. And I think that you're familiar with this normal configuration with blocker. This configuration here at the top, it's where I can allow or deny the access to a specific domain or a specific destination, depending on the category, right? So as you can see here that I denied all the adult material, I can go maybe to bandwidth and I can deny that, the access to this specific categories. But also under that configuration, you can now inspect an allowed web blocker category. So this action inspect, it's going to be applied depending on the category, and it's only available for you if the action is allow or warning, right? So let's say now that I am worried about the bandwidth, subcategories. So I can come here and say, okay, this one for viral videos, for surveillance, for streaming media, I want to inspect that. Right. So in this scenario now, it's going to inspect the traffic depending on the category that is categorized by web blocker. Also, if I want, I can show only all the categories, only the one that it is I am inspecting in here. If I'm gonna show all, Control A, quick action, I'm gonna inspect everything. So in this scenario that I'm gonna inspect all the categories that it's been allowed. And then maybe I can come here and say, okay, for let's say that it is related to government, right? For these, I don't want to inspect. So it's very granular when it comes to the configuration with blocker and inspect. There's also one checkbox here that inspect when the URL is uncategorized. So now it is checking everything that is being allowed except the one for government, military, and political organization. And if I click on this, it will inspect everything that it is not falling into these categories. Now, when it comes to the order of inspection, if you're going to take this approach of using web blocker to inspect, then please bear in mind when it comes to the order, the first thing that it's going to check whenever that we have the HTTPS content inspection, it is related to what is on the domain names in here that allowed this whitelist first, the one that we already have some of these domains there by default, some maybe that we added. The second thing in order is this list that we have, which is a predefined content inspection exceptions. So definitely, if you're going to use web blocker, this action, it has to be allow, because if this one is inspect, it will actually overpass or bypass all this web blocker configuration that you have in there, because the order is this list first, the second list is the predefined content, and then the action here that we have as an inspect, right? So if you want to go to web blocker, then you have to put this one as allow. Okay, so that when it comes to the configuration that's related to the firewall and the HTTPS proxy and the HTTPS content inspection. Another thing that I want to point out that to make use of the resources that's available for you. Today's session, it was just a quick overview and what are the steps for the deployment, why do we need HTTPS, proxy content inspection, and so on. But also, if you want to revisit in details, there is the documentation that's available for you. If you go to Google WatchGuard HTTPS content inspection, that it will take you to the details on how this is done. And also the HTTPS client proxy, the server proxy actions, all the steps that we talked about, how to do this configuration using Web UI or the policy manager. Another thing that it's really available for you, and it's very useful. If you just type WatchGuard tutorials and you go in their video tutorials for WatchGuard technologies, it's being updated regularly. And some of the videos that is being added lately, it's related to the certificates. Okay, so if you go there now, you'll notice that we have created this in our team, an education department, that they added a video that is related to the inbound content inspection and the outbound content inspection. So if you notice the details that we shared with you today in this session, it's related to the outbound content inspection, what we worried about, that we have users behind the firewall that's communicating with a specific server outside. But also we have here a video that shows you how to deal with the inbound content inspection. So if you want to protect your servers using the firewall and you want to do content inspection on the top of that. Also, there's another video here, how to create an Active Directory certificate for content inspection. So it also have some of the information that I shared with you in this session as well. The last thing that I want to point out is definitely it is very recommended that you go through the learning portal. This is accessible through your WatchGuard account of your partner, and you have under technical training, network security. Definitely, it is a good resource that you can go through this course. It has three different categories here, that we have the network basics, network security basics, and then we have the fireware essential. One of the topics that's being discussed here in details is related to the HTTPS proxy content inspection. There's 4 parts that you can go into the details. Again, in case that this information in the video tutorials and the documentation is not enough for you. So to conclude this session, I hope that it was useful for you. Don't be scared of turning a HTTPS content inspection on. Now you know how to do the configuration for it. You have 80% of the traffic is going to be encrypted. And if you want to make use of your total security and advanced security features, definitely you need to turn the content inspection on. Thank you, everyone, for your attention, and we hope to see you again in the next session. Okay, everyone, this is what we had for this session, but I just wanted to give a few minutes here. I know it's a lot of information to ask your questions. Otherwise, definitely, we are always open for your emails, that you can send us your questions that relate to HTTPS inspection.